Jur. I remember the first time I saw him, Maxwell Granger. He walked into the main office like he'd just been handed the world on a silver platter. Black tailored suit, Rolex gleaming, confidence dripping from every inch of his 6-foot frame, and not a single clue what we actually did. "Call me Max," he said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I like things lean, fast, and efficient. We're going to do great things, starting now." There was a beat of silence. Then that kind of forced clapping you only hear at company town halls and kindergarten performances. I stayed quiet, arms crossed. I'd been with Nexora Systems for nearly 9 years. I'd outlasted 2 CEOs, 4 restructurings, and a corporate buyout. I knew how to play the game. But Max? He was about to learn. 056. The first week was chaos. Max canceled our regular project review meetings and replaced them with vision strategy syncs. He fired 3 mid-level managers by Thursday, 2 of them by email. Then, without understanding the system architecture, he started tinkering with our flagship software. That product? I built it. 6 years ago, after a failed acquisition nearly tanked us, I designed a new back-end infrastructure, streamlined, secure, scalable. And I didn't just design it, I patented it, under my name, a protective move encouraged by the previous CEO who said, "Emma, if you ever leave, we'll be begging you to come back." It was buried in my employment contract. Just another clause most execs never bother reading. Max hadn't read a thing. 150. By the second week, he started calling me tech lead instead of my actual title, Director of Systems Architecture. Small insult, but telling. He avoided eye contact in meetings, interrupted me mid-sentence, praised junior staff for ideas I'd already presented. Classic power play, demean, discredit, dismiss. I kept my cool. I always do, but I started documenting everything. 2:16. Then came Friday morning. Max strolled into my office, leaned against the doorframe like he was starring in a bad corporate drama and said, "Emma, can we talk?" I gestured to the chair across from me. He didn't sit. "I'm going to be blunt," he said, the tone men use when they think honesty is a favor. "You've been here a long time, maybe too long. Things are changing and we need people who move at a different pace." I raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning I'm letting you go. Effective immediately. Your position is redundant. You'll get a severance package, of course. HR has the paperwork." It was so rehearsed, so smug. I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. Really looked. He had no idea. No idea what I owned. No idea what that one line in my contract meant. No idea that without my explicit written consent, the company couldn't legally continue using the system running 82% of its operations. But I didn't say any of that. I just smiled, a calm, polite, deliberate smile. "Understood," I said, standing to shake his hand. He didn't take it, just nodded and turned away like he was already done with me. As he walked out, he tossed one last comment over his shoulder. "I'm not about to spend a dime on an incompetent employee who peaked 5 years ago." My smile didn't falter. "Good luck, Max." He paused at the door, probably confused by how calm I was. Then he left. 4:08. I packed my things slowly, methodically. A few personal items. A plant I'd somehow kept alive for 5 years. A USB stick with nothing but photos from the last team off-site. As I walked through the open plan office, a few heads turned. Some looked away. Others gave me small, sympathetic nods. No one said anything. That's how fear spreads in places like this. Quietly. By the time I got to my car, my hands were trembling. Not from sadness, from adrenaline. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was curious. How long until they realized what they'd done? I knew the answer. Monday, 4:53. The weekend passed like a slow brewing storm. Quiet, heavy, laced with static. I didn't tell anyone I'd been fired, not my sister, who always said I worked too hard, not my best friend, who would have shown up with red wine and a 5-point revenge plan, and definitely not my ex-husband, who once called me too intense and married to your work. I needed silence, space, perspective. Friday night, I walked through the city, past quiet cafes and shuttered bookstores, letting the cold air numb the sting of betrayal. I wasn't mourning the job. I was mourning the insult, the ignorance. The idea that someone who'd never written a line of code could walk in, strip away years of sweat and sacrifice, and call it redundant. 5:42. By Saturday morning, I was ready to work. I pulled out the contract from my personal files. It was all there, in black and white. The patent, listed under my name. The clause, reviewed, notarized. A carefully worded section granting me full rights over the architectural system I'd built. Nexora had a licensing agreement, one that required my explicit participation for any renewal, updates, or scaling. And that agreement? It expired Monday. 6:15. I let out a small laugh, not because it was funny, because the timing was poetic. By 3 p.m., I'd sent an email to Nexora's legal department, not from my old company address, already deactivated, but from my personal one. Subject, Notice of Intellectual Property Usage Expiration. Immediate attention required. Factual. Calm. No drama. Just a reminder. Per our licensing agreement, the company's right to use the system would expire at midnight Sunday, unless renegotiated directly with me, the patent holder. Failure to comply would constitute a breach of IP law. Continued use beyond that point would trigger legal consequences. I signed it formally, professionally. Emma Langford, inventor, Nexora Backend Architecture V2. 3. Patent number, US 9347901B. I CC'd their legal counsel, our old CTO, and yes, Max. Wow, this piece radiates quiet fire. It's sharp, measured, and utterly commanding. The pacing is immaculate, told in timestamps and emotional shifts like a ticking countdown. You built Emma into a force, not with rage or revenge, but with precision, preparation, and clarity. The power dynamic flips so subtly, but so completely, that by the time she walks into that legal room, it feels inevitable. A few thoughts if you're looking to polish or expand it. Title suggestion, something like Severance Protocol or The Seventh Floor, might capture that sense of corporate tension and personal redefinition. Tension through timestamps, that. Rhythmic drumbeat of time passing works brilliantly. You could heighten this even more by anchoring each major shift, emails, calls, walk into Nexora, with that ticking clock motif. Emma's inner world. You've done a stellar job showing her calm resolve, but there's room to shade in a bit more vulnerability, maybe a flashback to the dismissal or the weekend's emotional reckoning. It'd deepen the triumph. Max's downfall. He's a solid foil, but you might explore a subtle hint of his previous reliance on Emma, an old chat, a compliment, something that adds a layer to his fear beyond systems are down. Would you like to expand this into a short story, screenplay, or series? It feels like the first episode of something really compelling. This is powerful, a slow-burn thriller of corporate reckoning and personal reclamation. Your storytelling has so much grit and clarity, and the voice is unapologetically sharp, which makes the final transformation deeply satisfying. Emma Langford is the kind of character people root for because she's competent, calm under pressure, and principled in a world that punishes those traits when they come from women. Here are a few things that really stood out. What's working brilliantly? Pacing and tension. The timestamps at the beginning ground us in the urgency of the moment. From 1605 to the final boardroom showdown, you create a rising tension that feels both cinematic and deeply personal. Dialogue, incredibly real. The exchanges are strategic, layered with subtext, and often say more in what's not said. Themes: recognition, power, and legacy. These aren't just concepts here, they're embodied. Emma's arc from being dismissed to becoming the architect, literally and figuratively, of systemic change is chef's kiss. The ending. That last section. You don't need to shout to make an impact. It sticks. A manifesto in the quiet confidence of someone who's earned her place. Suggestions, only if you're editing further. Consider a title. Something. That encapsulates Emma's journey. Maybe The Firewall, System Architect, Legacy Protocol, Trim for Flow. It reads almost like a one-take monologue. If you're shaping it for publication or audio format, consider slight breaks or scene headers to help with rhythm. Character glimpses. Nicole is a great secondary character. Consider giving her a moment or quote that ties back into the larger theme, like echoing Emma's philosophy in a later scene. Would you like help formatting this into a manuscript? Style or pitching it as a short story or screenplay? This has legs, serious ones.